The cameras flashed, the crowd froze. And just like that, morning television had a terrifying new obsession.
Yeah, I mean, the headlines are absolutely everywhere right now. Savannah Guthrie reportedly leaves New York after a terrifying Today Show breach. It's wild.
It really is. Welcome to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, the music industry, and pop culture.
From red carpet surprises to, social media controversies, we do deep dives into the stories behind the fame.
And if you're loving these Hollywood twists, definitely make sure you subscribe because we have got some crazy stories ahead today.
Oh, we really do.
So, okay, let's unpack this because morning television, right? It's designed to be this comforting routine. The weather anchor is smiling, the coffee is pouring, and it feels like the safest room in America.
Yeah, totally insulated from the chaos outside.
Exactly. But today's deep dive, it just shatters that illusion entirely. We're looking at how the most secure broadcast in the world was breached in just a matter of seconds.
Which completely fractures that baseline sense of safety that, we all take for granted as viewers.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to examine a stack of recent sources detailing this terrifying security breach at NBC's Today Show in New York.
But we aren't stopping there, are we?
No, we are not, because we're also going to look at how this shocking event at 30 Rock collides with a devastating, ongoing real-life mystery involving co-anchor Savannah Guthrie's family.
What's really fascinating here is how these two, completely distinct traumatic events, a studio intrusion on live television and then a home abduction across the country, they highlight the extreme vulnerability of highly visible public figures.
Yeah, we are basically watching the real-time collapse of the boundary between, reporting the news and actually becoming the news.
That's heavy.
It is. So here's our roadmap for you today. We're going to start with the heart-stopping 10 seconds inside Studio 1A and figure out how a modern security apparatus just failed. Then we'll look at the ripple effects that incident had on the Today Show staff, specifically Savannah Guthrie. And finally, we are going to trace this compounding anxiety back to the chilling disappearance of her mother.
A mystery that has kept the entire network on edge for, months at this point.
So let's start with the physical breach itself. Picture this. It's July 16th, 2026, a Thursday morning shortly after 9:00 a.m.
Right in the middle of the broadcast.
Exactly. And a 41-year-old man named Andrew Truelove slips past security at 30 Rockefeller Center. He makes his way into an unauthorized vestibule area, right near Studio 1A.
Which is, wait, how does a major network just miss someone walking in?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't 30 Rock essentially a modern-day fortress?
You would think so. I'm honestly baffled by this, too. You have turnstiles, RFID badges, private security, the NYPD standing right there. It seems completely impossible for someone to just wander into a restricted zone.
Given the millions of dollars invested in that specific infrastructure, it really should be impossible. The high-profile nature of the talent inside means they have overlapping fields of vision, multiple credential checks, but, any security system is only as strong as its human element.
Oh, that's such a good point.
It's like spending millions on state-of-the-art cybersecurity firewalls, but then getting hacked because one employee left their master password on a sticky note on their monitor.
Yeah, the physical infrastructure was flawless, but the human perimeter failed. So what actually happened at that checkpoint?
Well, according to the sources, the video surveillance of the incident showed two guards on duty at that specific entry point. One guard stepped away from their post,
Okay.
and the other guard simply looked away or, was distracted at the exact moment Truelove walked through.
Oh, wow. And that's literally all it takes. Just one momentary lapse in attention to bypass all that multi-million-dollar technology.
Exactly.
But this wasn't just a lost tourist looking for the bathroom, right? Who is this Andrew Truelove guy?
And that is the terrifying part. He isn't a random fan. He has a documented history of 8 prior arrests in New York.
8.
8. And while most were for criminal mischief, his record includes a recent assault charge where he allegedly attacked a staffer at his own residence.
So he has a known history of violence. And because of a distracted guard, he gets right to the perimeter of the live broadcast.
Yes. And the sources detailed that he was specifically looking for Al Roker.
The weatherman.
Yeah, the show's longtime weatherman. But when he couldn't find Roker, he confronted anchor Craig Melvin instead.
And Craig Melvin is just standing there doing his job. I assume he has zero warning this is about to happen.
None at all. Truelove lunges at Melvin, and the sources state he was actually shouting racial slurs.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. It was a targeted, racially motivated confrontation right in the absolute heart of NBC's flagship morning show.
Let's talk about the timeline, because the sources say this entire physical incident lasted only 8 to 10 seconds before Truelove was detained. 8 to 10 seconds. That is like nothing on a clock.
It's incredibly fast, but in a physical altercation, 10 seconds is an absolute eternity.
Right.
I mean, it is way more than enough time for someone to cause fatal harm. Fortunately, the remaining security reacted instantly and detained him. The NYPD officially arrested him at 10:39 a.m.
And the charges are severe. He was booked on hate crime burglary, hate crime menacing, hate crime criminal trespass, and harassment. He is currently being held at Rikers Island on $20,000 bail.
Which is significant.
Yeah, but I want to clarify something for you listening, because you hear hate crime attached to things like burglary and trespass, and it's like, how does that actually work legally?
Yeah. In a jurisdiction like New York, a hate crime enhancement essentially upgrades the severity of the base charge.
Okay, so it makes it worse.
Exactly. If prosecutors can prove that a crime like burglary or menacing was motivated in whole or in substantial part by a belief or perception regarding the victim's race, the law elevates the crime category.
And in this case, both Craig Melvin and Roker are black.
Right. So it can turn a misdemeanor into a felony, or
Yeah.
a lower-level felony into a higher one.
Sure.
Which significantly increases the mandatory minimum sentencing if he's convicted.
Because it acknowledges that the crime wasn't just an attack on an individual, but an act of intimidation against a specific community.
Exactly.
So the threat to Craig Melvin was neutralized quickly. But what was the fallout for the network? I mean, they can't just brush this off.
Oh, they definitely didn't brush it off.
Yeah.
NBC actually fired the security guard whose lapse allowed Truelove into the building.
Wow.
Yeah, and insider reports noted that staff were actually quite conflicted and sad about the dismissal because he was a well-liked, familiar presence in the building.
I'm sure. You see these people every day.
Right. But the severity of the breach left network executives with zero wiggle room. You just cannot have an unauthorized individual lunging at an anchor and not overhaul your protocols.
Did they change the physical security setup as well?
They did. Permanent upgrades were implemented immediately. If you walk outside the Today Plaza now, there is a significantly heavier, highly visible presence of both private NBC security and NYPD officers.
That makes sense.
They also took legal steps, securing court-ordered protection for both Melvin and Roker, which legally prohibits Truelove from going anywhere near them at work or at their homes.
And to his immense credit, Craig Melvin was back on the air the very next day.
That is so wild to me.
Right. He addressed the audience so calmly, letting everyone know he was, quote, safe and sound, and thanking the NYPD. It's just an incredible display of professionalism.
It really is.
But I have to think that while the physical threat was contained, the psychological impact of someone breaching that designated safe space is immense.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But wait until you hear what came next,
Oh.
because that extreme protective instinct the newsroom felt following this event. It wasn't just about the studio breach itself.
Right.
It was the breaking point of a collective trauma they'd been harboring for 5 months.
Which brings us to Savannah Guthrie. And that's not even the wildest part, because the timing of this intrusion is eerie. Savannah had just wrapped her portion of the broadcast and left the set just moments before Truelove struck.
Moments.
Literally just moments. And according to insider reporting, the newsroom is highly protective of her right now. One source was quoted asking, "How much more can one person take?"
Yeah, because when a workplace experiences a physical trauma, everyone's baseline anxiety spikes. But when one of your colleagues is already navigating an unimaginable, ambiguous personal nightmare, the collective fear compounds.
That just stacks up.
Exactly. The close call, the fact that she was just steps away from a violent intruder, it rattled the entire building.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Right after this horrifying studio incident, the internet rumor mill completely explodes. Savannah goes on the air and announces she is taking a break from the Today Show for a few weeks.
And if you were watching social media, the headlines were spinning wildly.
Oh, out of control. People were suggesting she was fleeing New York because she felt unsafe after the breach, or that there had been some grim, sudden update in her mother's case.
Which is a textbook example of how parasocial relationships warp our perception of media figures, right?
Yeah.
The public feels like they know Savannah. They saw a terrifying studio breach, followed immediately by her announcing a leave of absence, and the human brain naturally tries to link those two data points.
They always look for a narrative.
Right. It's a classic case of correlation being mistaken for causation.
But the actual truth behind her absence is entirely unrelated.
Completely unrelated. Though, I mean, still emotionally complex. Her departure was actually pre-planned. She is heading to Manchester, England, to shoot the first season of NBC's new Wordle game show.
Wait, Wordle, like the app?
Yeah, the Wordle game show, which is executive produced by Jimmy Fallon.
I have to say, the contrast there is just jarring. I mean, going from the news desk after a major security breach to hosting a game show based on a viral word puzzle.
I know, it is completely jarring.
Yeah.
The whiplash is insane. And what most people don't realize is that this project was supposed to film months ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was delayed by NBC specifically because of the family tragedy she's been dealing with. The network essentially hit pause and told her they would wait until she was ready.
Wow. The emotional weight of trying to be an entertainer while carrying that kind of grief is just, it's hard to fathom. I was reading her recent interview with the New York Times, and she touched on this exact dissonance.
What did she say?
She said, quote, "Everything is strange right now. It's strange to get up and do the Today Show every day, and it's strange to say that I'm going to do a game show when your heart is broken."
That is just heartbreaking because society expects media figures to be on, right? To be energetic, engaging, composed.
Always smiling.
Always. And doing that while carrying a profound unresolved trauma requires a level of psychological compartmentalization that is incredibly taxing.
Absolutely. And if you're listening and you haven't been following the backstory to truly understand why the Today Show newsroom is so on edge and what Savannah means when she says her heart is broken, we have to look at the agonizing 5 months of trauma that preceded the studio breach.
We really do. We have to shift our focus to February 1st, 2026, in the Catalina foothills of Arizona.
This is where Savannah's 84-year-old mother, Nancy Guthrie, lived. And we need to emphasize Nancy's physical reality here. She is 84, she has limited mobility. The local sheriff actually noted she couldn't walk 50 yards by herself.
Right.
And she relies on daily medication for a chronic condition, so she is a vulnerable adult living alone, though she does have family nearby.
And the lead up to her disappearance is completely ordinary. On the evening of January 31st, a Saturday, she had dinner at her daughter Annie's house. At 9:48 p.m., she was dropped back off at her home by her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni.
The timeline from here is so precise, it's chilling. At 9:50 p.m., her garage door closes. Tommaso drives away. Nancy is safely inside. But just hours later, at 1:47 a.m., a masked, gloved individual tampers with her doorbell camera.
And then, at 2:28 a.m., Nancy's bedside pacemaker monitor misses a scheduled transmission.
Wait, stop there. A pacemaker? I always thought those just regulated your heart rhythm internally. They broadcast data. Like, how does a mistransmission act as a timestamp for an abduction?
It's actually a fascinating piece of medical technology. Modern pacemakers don't just regulate the heart, they communicate.
Like Bluetooth.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Patients have a remote monitoring base station, usually sitting on their nightstand. The implanted device uses radio frequency or Bluetooth to ping that base station at scheduled intervals, say, every few hours or once a night.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then the base station uses a cellular signal or Wi-Fi to send that data to the patient's cardiology clinic.
So if the pacemaker moves out of range, the base station.
Exactly. If the patient is physically removed from the home, the implant can no longer ping the nightstand monitor. So when 2:28 a.m. hit and the scheduled transmission failed, it created a definitive technological timestamp of when Nancy was no longer in her bedroom.
That is incredible and horrifying. So she was officially reported missing the next day, Sunday, around noon, when a church member realized she hadn't logged on for a virtual service and called the family.
Right. And when relatives arrived, Nancy was gone. But her phone, her daily medications, and her essential belongings were all still there.
Which raises a really important point about the initial investigation. When an elderly person with medical conditions goes missing, the default assumption for law enforcement is usually that they wandered off or, suffered a medical episode outside.
But the crime scene immediately ruled that out.
Because it wasn't just an empty house.
Far from it.
Yeah.
First, investigators found blood at or near the entrance of the home.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and forensic testing rapidly confirmed that the DNA belonged to Nancy. Second, as we noted, the doorbell camera had been tampered with. The intruder initially tried to physically knock the camera off its mount. When that failed, they covered the lens with foliage from a potted plant.
Hold on. If they covered the camera lens, how do the FBI know who did it? I'm assuming it uploads to the cloud.
Spot on. This is where criminals often misunderstand modern smart home tech. A Google Nest camera or, similar devices, they don't store the video locally on a tape inside the doorbell.
Right, it's not a VHS tape.
Exactly. It streams the data instantly to a remote server. Covering the lens only blocks the camera from recording future footage. It does absolutely nothing to delete the footage that was already recorded of the intruder approaching and tampering with the device.
That is such a crucial mistake by the intruder. So law enforcement pulled the back-end data from Google. What did they see?
The FBI recovered footage showing an armed individual wearing a mask and a backpack.
Armed.
Armed. And one of the most bizarre and disturbing details noted by FBI Director Kash Patel was that the intruder was carrying a firearm that was improperly holstered right over his crotch.
That is just such an unsettling detail. It paints a picture of someone who is armed and dangerous, but perhaps erratic or, unprofessional.
Right. And the local sheriff, Chris Nanos, came out very early and stated unequivocally that this was a crime scene and Nancy was abducted against her will.
Which triggers an entirely different level of law enforcement response. You had the FBI and U.S. Customs and Border Protection joining the Pima County Sheriff's Department. They deployed drones, specialized police dogs, aerial resources.
But if you're listening to this thinking, why didn't they just track the kidnappers when they asked for money?
Well, later in the episode, we'll talk about the shocking twist nobody saw coming regarding those demands.
Yeah, because as soon as the word abduction entered the public sphere connected to a celebrity, it attracted an absolute circus of opportunists.
It really highlights a truly dark side of human nature. Very shortly after Nancy's disappearance, media outlets began receiving extortion demands. TMZ and a CBS affiliate in Tucson reported getting notes demanding millions of dollars, specifically in Bitcoin. Just briefly, why Bitcoin? I know it's popular for ransomware, but why a physical kidnapping?
Because Bitcoin operates on a decentralized digital ledger called a blockchain. Unlike a traditional bank transfer, there is no central bank or authority that law enforcement can simply call to freeze the account or reverse the transaction.
Okay.
While the transactions are public, the identities behind the digital wallets are anonymous, making it highly appealing for extortionists to launder money across borders.
And the family was desperate enough to pay. Savannah even released a video in early February, flanked by her siblings, looking directly into the camera and saying to the alleged kidnappers, "We received your message. We will pay."
Which is just gut-wrenching. But those specific notes demanding Bitcoin, they were a cruel hoax.
A hoax?
Yes. The FBI eventually stepped in and deemed those publicized demands as completely fake. In fact, a man in California was arrested on federal charges for posing as the abductor, simply to extort the family out of greed.
To look at a family in the absolute worst agony of their lives and see a financial opportunity is it's unfathomable to me.
It's disgusting.
But there was another note, wasn't there? One that wasn't a hoax.
Yes, there was. In June, months after the initial disappearance, NBC News reported on a different note. This was a communication that authorities had actually received back in February, but kept hidden from the public to protect the integrity of the investigation.
The natural assumption is that the June note was just another shakedown, right? More demands for Bitcoin.
No. Unlike the extortion attempts, this note did not demand money.
Oh.
It claimed that Nancy had died shortly after the abduction. And the individuals who wrote it actually expressed regret over her death.
They expressed regret.
Yes. And significantly, law enforcement believes this specific communication could be legitimate.
Wow. That is devastating. To hear that your mother may have passed away in the custody of her abductors, and to have the abductors themselves seemingly apologize, but still not provide a location for her remains.
The absolute lack of closure is why the family is still fighting so hard. You can't grieve properly when you are trapped in ambiguity.
They truly are fighting. Savannah previously pulled out of hosting the Winter Olympics entirely to focus on the search. The family put up a $1 million reward of their own money, bringing the total active reward to $1.2 million.
And they recently donated $500,000 to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
That donation is so poignant. Even in the depths of their own tragedy, they are actively trying to support other families living through the exact same nightmare.
Just a few days ago, aligning with Savannah's return to the Today Show, prior to her game show break, the family released a new statement.
Yeah, they marked it as 5 months of agony and unending trauma. They stated, "There's not a moment that goes by that we aren't actively trying to find our mom." They're still pleading for her return, despite the grim nature of that authenticated ransom note.
Because until you have physical evidence, until law enforcement can bring her home, you have to hold on to hope. The human mind demands a resolution.
It does. So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at a man slipping past a multi-million-dollar security checkpoint in New York, and we ended up in the Arizona desert analyzing remote pacemaker data for an 84-year-old woman.
It's quite a journey.
I think what ties this all together is that the boundary between the people who deliver our news and the news itself has completely collapsed. The Today Show team, and Savannah Guthrie in particular, are tasked with reporting on national tragedies while they are actively living through their own.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a really grim reality of modern visibility. There is this deeply ingrained assumption that fame, or financial resources, or living in a quiet suburb, or working inside a corporate skyscraper provides this layer of insulation from the dark, chaotic elements of the world.
Right, we think of them as fortresses.
Exactly. But whether it's an 84-year-old woman living quietly in the Catalina foothills, or a famous news anchor standing in the heart of Rockefeller Center, that insulation is surprisingly, terrifyingly fragile.
It really is.
It only takes one person tampering with a doorbell camera, or one security guard looking the wrong way for 10 seconds for the perimeter to fail.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over today. Think about the role of the media and your role as the public in these tragedies. True crime is an undeniable obsession in our culture. We consume it like entertainment.
Really do.
But when a true crime involves the very journalists we invite into our living rooms to drink coffee with us every morning, does our collective obsession with the mystery overshadow their basic humanity? What happens to the psyche of a journalist who has to stare down a camera lens and calmly report on the horrors of the world, knowing their own personal nightmare remains entirely unresolved?
It's a profound psychological burden to carry. We expect them to be the anchor of our comforting routine, even when their own routine has been violently shattered. Stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because we cover a lot of intense ground here.
Absolutely. Next time you turn on morning television and see that safe, cheerful space, remember the invisible weight some of those anchors might be carrying and what it takes to maintain that illusion. You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture.
Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.
Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.